For 3 decades, Johnny Carson was the undisputed monarch of late-night television. As host of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, he welcomed America into what seemed like his living room every weeknight, providing a surefire combination of wit, charm, and effortless command of one of the most unruly forms of entertainment. From 1962 to 1992, Carson sat behind his desk and interviewed over 22,000, from nervous young comedians dreaming of making it big to the most influential cultural figures of the 20th century. To millions of Americans, Carson represented the ultimate professional, a steady presence who appeared unflappable regardless of what transpired on the stage adjacent to him. But behind the scenes, the man himself had a quieter hierarchy. He had favorites, a select few of them who were able to penetrate the veneered exterior and reach the real Johnny the man, not the Johnny the host. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Only a few guests, according to producers, staff, and even Carson himself, could make him forget that the cameras were rolling. Around them, Carson's notoriously secretive nature would soften. He'd laugh louder, listen more carefully, and even let his otherwise strict production schedule relax. These visitors weren't there to plug a film or record an album. Something of value, be it heart, brains, comedy, or sheer unpredictability, was brought by each of them. Carson secretly referred to them in later years as his 9 Golden Age guests, the ones he loved most. Right at the top of that list was the gentleman who brought out a most unexpected sensitive side to Carson before the world, Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart, the guest who reduced Carson to tears. Whenever Jimmy Stewart appeared on the Tonight Show stage, the whole mood would change. Carson, typically rapid with one-liners and interruptions, became a starry-eyed fan. Jimmy was all America wanted to think about itself. Carson once told a close friend, Stewart exemplified decency, humility, and truthfulness in a business that too often was riddled with phoniness. His slow, stumbling speech wasn't an act. It was him. Unlike many of his aging peers who banked on well-rehearsed anecdotes, Stewart wrote with a natural, sometimes stumbling honesty that Carson couldn't resist. On one night in 1981, Stewart solidified his spot as Carson's favorite guest forever. He appeared with a brief poem called Beau that he had composed for the death of his golden retriever. With no theatrics at all, Stewart read his lines aloud, his voice shaking with authentic love and sorrow. Johnny Carson actually cracked up on camera for the first time in his long career. His eyes filled with tears, his normally stoic composure dissolved, and he let himself be human in front of millions of viewers. A camera operator later recalled, I'd never seen Johnny react that way. He didn't try to hide it. He didn't crack a joke to escape it. He just sat there, moved, the way the rest of us were. From that evening on, Stewart occupied a special place in Carson's heart. The crew even learned to alter schedules whenever Stewart was on. Johnny would request that his segments be lengthened, a virtually unheard-of demand from a host who generally insisted on strict timekeeping. Carson's respect went far beyond the stage. On the night before his retirement in 1992, Stewart was among the very few individuals Carson personally phoned to thank. Their relationship was authentic, not created in Hollywood pretense, but in honest respect and feeling. If Stewart epitomized the emotional integrity Carson never revealed, the next on his list drew upon Carson's comic sensibilities, Bob Newhart. Bob Newhart, the effortless comic. If Carson's heart was touched by Jimmy Stewart, Bob Newhart tickled his comedic mind. With his dry humor and impeccable timing, Newhart had a counterpart with Carson in finding the joke in the minutest, most mundane aspects of everyday life. Bob is the most effortlessly funny man I know, Carson used to confess. That was the greatest compliment coming from him. Unlike most comedians who arrived armed with pre-rehearsed monologues, Newhart excelled in spontaneous conversation. He and Carson played stories back and forth like jazz improvisers playing a tune. Carson would release a perfectly placed aside, and Newhart would build upon it to create something even more humorous. Their natural timing was so good that it seemed almost choreographed, yet it was completely improvisational. Carson, usually the formidable master of time, would frequently wave aside his producers when Newhart was in full flow. "Let him go," he'd indicate to the control room. For most visitors, Carson was waiting patiently for the seconds to tick by until their segment was over. With Newhart, he wished the moment would last forever. Their relationship went beyond the show. Carson rarely invited Newhart to play golf with him, a privilege shared by very few in Hollywood. To Carson, golf wasn't business, it was friendship. Newhart had passed that threshold. He wasn't merely a popular guest, he was a genuine buddy. But if Newhart offered delicate, cerebral humor, the next guest offered mayhem, pranks, and improvisation, Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds, the partner in crime. When Burt Reynolds visited The Tonight Show, the crowd knew they were getting more than they bargained for. Carson and Reynolds converted the stage into a playground. Water pistols concealed under trench coats, pie in the face, shaving cream attacks. Nothing was spared. Burt gets the game, Carson once explained to a producer. While most celebrities came equipped with prepared stories from their publicists, Reynolds knew that late-night TV was about making things happen. He wasn't there to sell a movie, he was there to have a good time. One evening, Reynolds covered Carson in shaving cream during what was meant to be a serious segment. Far from irritated, Carson doubled over laughing. Even more amused off camera. Johnny loved real surprise, a director remembered, not the fake kind. Burt was one of the few who could genuinely catch him off guard. Reynolds also sailed through what staff members referred to as Carson's teasing test. Johnny enjoyed to mock his guests, but he hated thin-skinned stars. Reynolds didn't bat an eye. He laughed along and even invited more swipes at his own expense. Their light-hearted competition made for some of the best TV, and in backrooms, a real friendship. If Reynolds stirred Carson's playful side, Orson Welles touched something else, his mind. Orson Welles, the genius who fascinated Carson. Carson was known to be the everyman host, with a quick wit, but few instances of offering serious talk on television. However, when Orson Welles appeared, Johnny's secret intellectual side emerged. Johnny was impressed with Orson, one producer said. Carson had read about history, literature, and theater beforehand, just to be ready for Welles's guest spots. They discussed politics, Shakespeare, and Welles's interest in magic, a topic Carson loved as well. Indeed, Welles once did elaborate allusions on the show, leaving host and audience agog with amazement. More than Welles's genius, Carson was in awe of his honesty. Welles talked as freely of his failures as of his successes, a Hollywood rarity. Carson admired that intensely. Those were the times when Johnny wasn't Johnny Carson, the host, one coworker recalled. He was just John Carson, the inquiring man. But if Welles satisfied Carson's intellect, the next visitor gratified his comic spirit, Jack Benny. Jack Benny, the master who inspired him. Jack Benny was the idol of Carson. "He was the reason I do what I do," Carson admitted once. All of Benny's philosophy of comedy, employing silence, allowing reactions to be funnier than punchlines, and perfecting the pause, became ingrained in Carson. When Benny came to the show during the 1970s, Carson's respect was evident. He laughed more freely, yielded more, and even ordered the crew to highlight Benny's responses rather than his own. For Carson, who rarely relinquished control, that was remarkable. There was a photograph of Benny on the wall of Carson's private office, the only photo of a celebrity he ever kept. That photograph embodied all Carson prized, not celebrity but command. Carol Burnett, the sunshine guest. If Jack Benny was Carson's inspiration, Carol Burnett tamed him. As soon as she was on the show, Johnny visibly relaxed. He trusted her so much, enough to allow her to go off-script, tease him, or even turn the interview around. Carol brings sunshine onto the stage, Carson once said to Ed McMahon. She was kind to everyone, from the camera crew to makeup artists. Carson picked up on it, and he appreciated her warmth as much as her comedy genius. Producers remembered Carson frequently running over her segments, sometimes pushing other guests aside entirely. Off the air, He talked about her as the gold standard of talk show etiquette. With Burnett, Carson wasn't acting. He was just having fun. James Garner, what a movie star should be. For Carson, James Garner was the definition of authenticity. He told Hollywood stories as if they were tales from an office job, light-hearted, unpretentious, and always grounded in reality. Carson despised phoniness, and Garner was the opposite. He arrived without entourage, thanked the crew, and